So this month we're back to the picture that I started, part two. I've done a bit more on the branches and I need to do the rocks now, but I still, bits of it I don't like this branch. But what I've decided actually is that I don't like this trunk either, that I could actually just crop it off. So let's just have a see. And I think that would work okay. And that sort of solves the problem with the branch as well. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on that. I've put some little twiddly bits here to lighten up the dark trunks, and I need to do far more branches here. But let's just make a start with the rocks now. I've just watched this video and it is a little bit blurred at the moment. I don't know why. I will get this filming malarkey sorted out at some point, but it does improve as we continue. But what I'm doing at the moment is I am just working into the crevices, if you like, of the rocks and trying to emphasize them a little bit more. Yeah, as you can see, I'm using a dark colour and I'm going to put a little bit more colour onto the rocks as well. And then I will add a bit of cling film on top of this to create a pattern, because the pattern sometimes helps you. It gives you patterns that you can work on. Does the job for you really. So while that's drying, I'm just going to work on this one over here. Work into the crevices. So basically, when you're doing this, you're looking for a crisp edge and a soft edge. So for example, if I just paint a line here, make sure you've got lots of paint on there. So I want the left hand side of that line to stay crisp, but the right hand side of the line to sort of disappear. So as you can see, I'm using water, coming up to it very carefully, and then letting my paint bleed into the water. So you have a hard edge on the left and a soft edge which is diffused on the right. So if I can put another little line in here and do the same again. Just a bit of water there, a bit of water. So that's what I'm going to do just in this bit here. Exactly the same. Put a line on. Keep the top edge crisp, and then underneath come with water and just soften that bottom edge of the line. Basically that's what you do everywhere. Now we'll do another video on this. Maybe I'll do that next month for one of my Arty tips. So you just work your way around. And let's just see what that's looking like. That's looking pretty good. I've done a bit more work on there. In fact, I've done too much and it's too detailed. So David Bellamy, you can see he uses hardly any detail, just little bits. He leaves it to your imagination really. So I've decided that actually the middle rock there is a bit too, this one's okay, but this one's too detailed. So I'm just going to lift a bit off, put some water on. You can have too much of a good thing. And I'm going to just take off some of that detail. Yeah, because I definitely seem to have gone back to my default setting of being a trained illustrator, which I do like to sort of be a bit more free these days. And for some reason, I started doing this in a very illustrative way. So I've had to carry on doing that. As you can see, the amount of work and detail that has gone into that. So this is taking rather a long time. This is where we are so far. So what I'm wanting to do now is I want to put some sort of like undergrowth and plants in this bottom left hand corner. Now I've not got an awful lot to do because obviously we're cutting some of it off, and I'm going to print with leaves. Now in the last video, I think it was a few months ago now, on my Arty tips, if you go to my channel you'll see how to do that, but this is just a recap that you just paint. There's two ways of doing it actually, so do go back and look on my channel, but I'm just going to paint on the leaves this time. Fairly flat leaves, nothing too raised, and I've got 2 or 3 plates here with different colours, greens and yellows. Be careful when you put them down, you can't really move them about once they're on. So I'm going to put a few of these on. 2 or 3 of these flat ones here. Don't know how these will work. The ferns tend to work quite well, so I'll put a couple of those on as well. Do one more. Try not to make them too uniform. Should put it there. No, put it there. And I'm going to squash them down in a minute. So I'm going to put a plastic wallet over the top. So I'm just going to put a few more on. This is a nice fern. I would imagine this will work reasonably well. Nice and flat. Just place it wherever you want. And then stick a plastic wallet over the top. Give it a squish. Now I can see some of the paint is actually squishing out underneath the leaves, so I might put a piece of cling film underneath there so that if anything is coming out, the paint will make a bit of a pattern, and then just put a heavy book on top. So this is dried now, super duper fast. Yeah, so I've just left that for a little while and come back to it, and now we'll just take off the cling film. So any bits that were seeping out, I've got little bits of pattern on them now, which is better. And then we take off the leaves. So that one's worked nicely. Not so sure about these. No, they've not worked very well. It is very hit and miss. So I'm going to add some more scrim over the top of this, and I talked about that in the last video. Once again, I've got a video all about that, but I did put some in part 1. Oop, shouldn't really move it about, otherwise you start making your paper all dirty. So I've got a really block area of green there, but I'll sort that out later. So now I'm going to do some branches while that's drying, and I'm just going to show you how I do the branches to make them a bit soft. Can you see how all the edges of the branches and the trunk are quite soft and feathered, and there's little bits, sort of little twiddly bits sticking out? That's the technical term. Then I'll show you how you do this. So I use quite a lot of paint. So you've got like a puddle of paint on here. Get the shape right, obviously. Make sure it all stays wet, and then with a spray bottle, just give it a quick spray, and can you see how it feathers out? And then any other little branches that you put in that wet area will sort of be feathered anyway. As you can see, as you paint over that area that's speckled with water, you get this lovely feathered effect. I'll do one down here. So you can see the difference. That's without the spray, and that's with. And it just softens the edge. And I just really like that effect. So then you can put all your twiddly things in. Twiddly branches with a very fine brush or a rigger. Until you're happy with it, really. You could go mad, but I'm trying not to. Now, the pastels, the annoying thing is the pastel that I started to use in the last part 1 of this video, I can't find. And the ones that I do have are not the same colour. Look, that's a different green completely. Very frustrating. And then that's not right. But if I mix them together, then that might do the job. So a little bit later on, I think that's what I'm going to do. I will use those two together. But now I'm just going to work back onto this area in the foreground, which is now dried. And what I'm doing, because some of it became a bit solid, because my colours are non-staining, I can lift out some of the paint I don't want. So like bits that have bled in between little leaves, for example, I can get the leaves back by lifting the paint out in between the shapes. So you can see here, I can just get rid of that. And I'll show you a little bit more down here in this grey bit, which is a bit solid. You see? You can get some nice detailed effects. So you're working in negative effectively by taking out the background. So now I have a nice thin little stem or little grass there. Okay. But then the Cascade Green actually does leave a little bit of a stain. I can't get as much of the paint off as I like. So I might just use a little bit of white gouache, maybe mixed with a bit of burnt sienna, to paint back into some of these areas, but not much. So I'm using the white here now, just to emphasize some of these little gaps a little bit more. The fern on the left, I like that just as it is. So it's just some of these other areas that either didn't work or are a bit too solid and the colour bled too much. You know, don't despair. There's always a way of getting it back to the way you want. And this is looking okay. Yeah, I quite like that. So I'm going to call that a day, otherwise I'm just really going to overwork it. So this picture has been a real challenge and very nearly ended up in the bin. Well, maybe not the bin, but the drawer, which is actually okay, because it is all right to actually step away from a piece of work and then come back to it later. So I suppose I did have faith that at some point I would be able to get it, you know, in a better, well, so that I liked it better. So anyway, I hope that's helped, and to show you that, you know, we all have problems. So happy painting.